Well, hi there. Welcome along to IrishRacing.com. Welcome along to Formscan, sponsored by Midnite Bet. I'm delighted to say Donn McClean is back in the saddle for today's show. We've been talking all things Cheltenham with Don over the course of the last 5-6 weeks. Well, we're all things this weekend. We might even put the dreaded C word in at the end of the show. But Don, how are you doing? And I say, as you would expect, Sandown the side. A relatively quiet weekend on the Irish racing front.
Yeah, look, it's the weekend before Cheltenham. It can't be a festival every day. But that said, good race at Gowran Park tomorrow. The Shamrock Chase and the Leinster Nationals at Naas on Sunday. So still some interesting racing ahead. But yeah, it's all gearing up to Cheltenham next Tuesday, isn't it?
Absolutely. Winners to be found, nonetheless. That old phrase, was it? A 4-1 winner at Gowran Park pays the same as a 4-1 winner at Cheltenham, although an even money winner at Cheltenham feels about 100-1 sometimes, considering how difficult it is. But yeah, anyway, we will kick off, as you say, Don, with Saturday's action, the Shamrock Handicap Chase, 4:25, Gowran Park. 11 declared for this. Champagne Marla likely to be heading the field here for the Henry de Bromhead Darragh O'Keefe stable. Laser Wolf 9-2, the last Tango 5-1, 13-2 bar. How are you viewing this one, though?
Yeah, it's a competitive race, Ed. Good to see Rebel Gold in there for Pat Foley. He actually won his beginner's chase at Gowran Park back 4 years ago on Thyeste's Day 4 years ago. He's a 12-year-old now, but he showed the last day in the Donn and Joan Moore Memorial Chase that he retains lots of his enthusiasm. I think he made a mistake at the second last, which didn't help him. That's a race that he's won before, so he's interested in there. Back to Gowran Park, a track that we know that he handles. Hagranka Date is in there as well for Barry Connell, Finn Maguire taking the ride, and he won that EMS Copiers handicap chase at Punchestown there last season, and that's normally a race that is a springboard to horses who've gone on to even bigger things, but he just hasn't fully got there yet. He was well beaten in the Paddy Power Chase at Leopardstown over Christmas. He was well beaten in the Leopardstown Chase last time, as well as the Dublin Racing Festival. Interesting that Barry is fitting a set of cheek pieces for the first time tomorrow, and if that could bring him back to the level of form that he showed, he beat Percival Legalwa in that EMS Copiers race. So he's a horse who, he's off 139 now, only £8 higher than he was when he won that race. So he would be interesting if he could bounce back to form. And the same applies to Whiskey Wealth, another horse who goes well here. He won this race last year. Terence O'Brien's horse off mark 125. He's now 131. And he's been a little bit out of sorts for the last couple of runs. Terence O'Brien fitting cheap pieces for the first time tomorrow. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes. But I think the most solid one in the race, Ed, is the one you mentioned, Champagne Mall, or Henry de Bromhead's horse. Like he hasn't won yet over fences, but he's only had 4 runs. It was a good run the last day at Fairyhouse when he finished second behind Don't Talk. Solomon Lane, who finished third in that race, came out and finished second behind Midweek Voices at Gowran next time. That was Champagne Mallard's first run back after a short break. He's 1-for-1 at Gowran as well. He won the handicap hurdle there in January last year, so on Thyeste's Chase Day last year. So we know that he handles the track well. And yeah, with just 4 runs under his belt, he's got a chase rating of 114. It's only £1 higher than his hurdles rating. I think there's more to come from him over fences. He's only 7 as well. So back at Gowran Park, that's a positive for him, I think. And yeah, I think it's correct that he's towards the head of the market.
Indeed, trappy looking contest, isn't it? Yeah, the Hagranka Date, though, definitely interesting on back form. As you could say, some of the horses Barry Connell's individual has been mixing it with. Read pretty well in the context of this. I was looking back to the December 2023, beaten just over 10 lengths by Spillane's Tower, etc., etc. There's a body of work, isn't there, going further back to if the first time headgear works for Hagranka Date to at least be getting involved around a double figure price.
Oh, that's it. He's a talented horse, Ed. We know that from what he's done in the past. He won well at Limerick before he went on to Punchestown and won that. It was a big enough price that day. And I remember Percival Legalwa went off in front early and looked like he had the race in the bag, but he did well. He stayed on really well, and I'd have earmarked then as a horse who could go on to much bigger things. Some of his predecessors in that race, I think Kenboy won that race going way back. Real Steel won it. Kilcrut won it. Like it's a race that Steering for Lunge won it. Like it's a race that can be a good, a springboard for horses going on to be very high class staying chasers, and he just hasn't quite got there yet. But as you say, the talent is there, And if the first time blinkers can unearth that talent again, then yeah, he could be a big player in the race.
Indeed, it'd be a nice nod to the stable, wouldn't it? With a big week with likes of William Money and Marie National making the journey over for the festival next week. Right, we'll come across the sea, but not for Cheltenham, but for Sandown Park for our next port of call. It is Imperial Cup Day. There's lots going on. We're going to kick off with the EBF Final at 150. I should say not 150, 150. 18 declared for this one. A trappy looking counter, as you would expect. Ben Pauling's Meet Me by the Sea. Been pretty impressive in recent times, vying for favouritism alongside the Kemble Brewery and Paul Nicholls' Belliano. If you're going to call them the big three in the market here, Don, would you be siding one of those? If not, who'd you like at bigger prices?
Yeah, look, as you say, it's always an interesting race. The EBF Final, and it's over 2.5 miles. It's normally a stamina test as well. It's normally a race that's won by horses who have more stamina than that required for 2.5 miles. I guess they're young horses, so it makes sense that they will get further in time. Meet Me by the Sea, as you said, Ben Pauling's horse was good. He's 3 for 3 now over hurdles. He won well last time, beat Mystical Moon. He kept on well to beat him. Alan King's horse, who came out and finished second at Exeter next time. He made all the running then, and he just always looked like he was holding Mythical Moon. He was an odds-on shot, so he was expected to go and win, but I thought he did as much as he needed to do. So he's obviously a big player in the race. And the Kemble Brewery as well, tongue-tie on for the first time. But of the three, I prefer Belliano of Paul Nicholls. He's won 2 of his 3 hurdles races. His only defeat was to the New Lion at Sheffield back in late October, which obviously looks a lot better now than it did at the time. And then last time at Market Racing, again, he was an odds-on shot to win. He raced up with the leader, I'm a Lumberjack, for much of the way. And I'm a Lumberjack fell at the second last flight when he was tired. Then he had to see off the challenge of Silverthorn. So I thought he did well to win it, and he won well in the end. He came away from Silverthorn. He won nicely. He's a progressive horse. The interesting that Paul Nicholls won this race, or won that Market Racing race with McFabulous back in 2020, I think. And McFabulous went on and won this race. I think it was run at Kempton that year. It was COVID year, wasn't it? The racing program got altered around quite a lot. But the fact that Paul Nicholls was previous in that regard, I'm sure that when Belliano was going on to the Market Racing race, that he probably had this race in mind for him. After that, he's off a mark of 125, which is fine. He was rated 122 going into that novice hurdle the last day, but you'd think that he's a horse who's, I suppose, in common with a lot of his rivals as well, and he's got the potential to be a good bit better than the handicap rating off which he races, but he's got stamina as well. So, like, he won over 2 miles, 5.5 furlongs at Ascot back just at the long walk hurdle meeting just before Christmas. So I think he's got plenty of the armor, a lot of the armory that you look for a horse in this type of race.
Indeed. Paul Nicholls has won this, as you alluded to, 3 times in the last 10 years. Complete Unknown in 2022 was the one of the others. McFabulous, as you say, 2020, and Adume in 2015. Last year's winning trainer is Ben Pauling, represented by Meet Me by the Sea, who's made rapid strides, really. You say a couple a Ludlow maiden hurdle win, then looked very smart in beating the Kemble Brewery, of course, who they reopposed today. Next time out, Ludlow, and then Doncaster last time out. Look, there was officially a neck in it, wasn't there, as a 1-2 winning favourite, Don? And it seemed to divide opinion that there was this kind of feeling there was perhaps a lot more in the tank than that old cliche of the official margin of victory suggests. How do you take that point of view?
Yeah, I think that's probably right, Ed. I just thought he was always holding Mythical Moon on the run to the line, and he'd been out in front for a long way. So you can allow, he's an inexperienced horse. You can allow the fact that he got a little bit tired. I suppose he is £2 worse off. Callum Pritchard's claim has been reduced from £7 to 5.
Yeah,
and he's gone up by £2 as well for that win. Obviously, it wasn't a handicap, but the handicap had raised him by £2, so he's effectively £4 higher than he would have been without that run. But I thought he did well to win. Plus, he's got that experience. And Callum Pritchard, he was excellent value for his £7 claim. He's very good value still for his £5 claim. So I'd see that as a positive more than a negative.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd tentatively be with Meet Me by the Sea. But they say this does look a bit of a trappy encounter, doesn't it? Right, moving on. 225 will be our next protocol, the next race on the card. It is, of course, the big one, the Imperial Cup. 17 going to post here. Incredibly wide open looking market, isn't it? Around 6-1 the field, Bo Zenith, Go Dante. It's been a little bit disappointing this season, but of course, as previous here, as the defending champion, as a 13-2 poke, you've then got Lump Sum at 7, Spirit Bay, 15-2, 10-1 bar. I mean, I suppose we've got to kind of start with the top of the market and Bo Zenith for the Nicky Henderson and Nico de Boinville team. Are you, well, I suppose, would you rather have the rest of the field at 1-6 or this individual at 6-1?
Yeah, I think I'd go with the 1-6 shot on this end.
Yeah.
Look, he's a likable horse, but yeah, I think it's a deep race. Go Dante, you mentioned he's back from Ori. He won this race last year, just got home from Favois in the end. He had Jipco back behind him in third, and Jipco's enhanced that form since. He won it off 129 last year. He's now down to 127, so he's £2 lower than he was last year. And I'm sure Ollie Murphy's had this race in mind for him for a little while. He finished behind Joyous and behind Lump Sum last time at Newbury in that William Hill handicap hurdle. But I think obviously back at Sandown and back in this race, you'd imagine that he'll be at concert pitch tomorrow. He's a horse, like he's a talented horse going back. He's 9 years old now, but he ran at the Cheltenham hurdle in 2021 as a novice. I think he fractured his pelvis in that. But back at Sandown and back in this race, I think he's a big player in the race. Great that Batman Girac has gone over Willie Mullins' horse, JJ7. Yeah, taking the ride for Simon Munir and Isaac Suede. I thought, like, he's a horse he's been very, very keen through his career, but I thought he was running a big race the last day in the big 2 mile handicap hurdle at the Dublin Racing Festival. McLaury ran out a really impressive winner, as we know, and Stormheart, his stable companion, as in Batman Girac's stable companion, stayed on to finish second. But Batman Girac himself, he was staying on nicely. Like, he'd come from a little way back, and I'm sure he would have been placed. He definitely wouldn't have beaten the winner. He probably wouldn't have beaten Stormheart for second place, but he probably would have been third or fourth. So that was a really good run. He is off 135. I think he's still rated 129 in Ireland, the mark off which he raced in the Leopardstown race. So he's £6 higher in Britain than he is in Ireland. So it's harsh enough, I think. But he's a horse who's got lots of talent, and he was always highly regarded. He finished 6th in the champion 4-year-old hurdle at the Punchestown Festival as a juvenile last season. And as we've discussed before, Ed, the last year's crop of juveniles were a very talented bunch. So I think he's a player in the race, but I just thought Lump Sum should have been a wee bit shorter than he is.
Right, okay.
He's a really likeable horse. The Sam Thomas horses are in tremendous form. Katate Dori won the big handicap chase at Kempton there last week. Steel Ally ran second. Vincenzo's only just beaten in the Greatwood Gold Cup. So he's had, I think his last 5 or 6 runners have all finished in the first 3. And Lump Sum, he ran a big race in that Newbury race. Like, he was back in the field early on. He made really nice ground in the early part of the home straight. Dylan Johnson just allowed him move through his field without having to get too serious with him. Now, look, he had no answer in the end to Joyous, but Joyous, she could be seriously good. She's going for, she's going for the mare's hurdle now. She's been supplemented to that. But Lump Sum, like, he's a hold-up horse, and I think that's a positive for this race generally, especially if there's a good pace on. And there should be a good pace on. Knickerbocker Dory's in the race. He likes to go forward. Big James likes to go forward as well. So there should be a good pace in the race. He goes well on good ground. A lot of his good form this year has been going left-handed, and he was well beaten behind Constitution Hill in the Christmas hurdle going right. But he won the Dovecote hurdle as a novice going right-handed, so I wouldn't worry about the right-handed track. Dylan Johnson's good value for his £3 claim. I just think there are plenty of positives about Lump Sum, especially given the way the race will probably be run. There should be a fast pace, and that should suit his hold-up style of running. And I think Sandown, the hurdles track, especially on easy ground, suits a hold-up horse more than a front runner, unless they go a sedate pace. But yeah, I think Lump Sum has got plenty in his favour. Yeah,
I'm probably with you here, Don. Lump Sum each way. This is a horse who's pretty much faced some impossible tasks over the course of the last 18 months. As you say, trying to give over a stone to Joyeuse. He's now been supplemented for the Mayor's Hurdle at the Cheltenham Festival at Newbury last time out. Before that, faced Constitution Hill in a Grade 1, runner-up to Sagino in a Grade 1, back in Handicap Company off 1-3-4-1 nicely. And then again, you go back to last season, had to chase home the likes of Mystical Power and Firefox in the top novices at Aintree. But then you come away from that Grade 1 level, beat Fiercely Proud in a Grade 2, and that form has worked out an absolute treat. So, yeah, there is a trend here, isn't there? Although the horse does have to lump around a lot of weight, just that notch below the top level. He seems to really cash in. I'm finding it hard to kind of knock him out of frame there. So the double curse for myself and Dom with lump sum. Next to the cards, we'll move on to the 3 o'clock. And of course, this is the listed Mayor's Bumper. We want to call it that. Charisma Cat is your pretty warm in the market here for the Tom Cannon and Alan King team. I'll kick off this individual here. Former side, Don. Alan King's gone about 3 weeks without a winner. The yard are not firing on all cylinders. It is, inverted commas, stable form, something you do pay a lot of attention to. Or are you one of those people who says, well, look, on law of averages, they're going to come out of form, come back into form sooner rather than later. And it's only going to take Alan King to fire in a double, with everyone saying how in form the horses are. So is it a fickle argument, the stable form angle?
I think it's a factor, Ed, for sure, like everything is. I don't put too much weight on it. Definitely, if you fancy a horse and it's coming from a yard that hasn't had hasn't had a winner, just have had horses underperform, that's definitely a worry. Well, for me anyway, you have to temper your enthusiasm and maybe temper your stake accordingly. But yeah, like it wouldn't cause me to not back a horse unless the stable was desperately out of form. And we see it all. I suppose Venetia Williams is a key example. She seems out of form in the early part of the season, then suddenly she's got 4 winners out of 6 over a weekend. But yeah, look, it's a factor for sure. But I suppose my starting point is form and potential to improve, and then after that, the other elements will fall into place, including stable form.
Yeah, indeed. So with that in mind, then, would you be against Charisma Cat as a 2-1 poke? And if so, who would you be siding with?
No, I'd be with him. After all that, yeah, it's definitely a factor. But I just think look, and there's a danger that he's an overbet horse, or he will be overbet, or he has been overbet, because unlucky looking losers, they tend to be overbet next time. But he did so much went against him the last 8 market race, and like it was a funny race. He kind of lost his place on the run out of the back straight, and then even in the home straight, he just couldn't really get racing room. He kind of Tom Cannon had to wait for an out before he could take him to the outside, or take her to the outside. By the time he took her to the outside, the race was over. It looked like she wasn't going to get near there, but she stayed on to such effect that she got to within a neck of Kingston Queen. And Kingston Queen, David Pipe's mare, she'd been out in front for a long way, so probably had the run of the race. Charisma Cat, I thought, did well. Like she had Dream Shadow behind her as well that day, and there's no real reason that I can see why Dream Shadow should reverse placement with her. Dream Shadow was sent off as favourite for that race in front of her, and maybe she just underperformed on the day. But on that run, and we don't have an awful lot of evidence as befits a bumper, but I just thought Charisma Cat did so much wrong and ran such a big race, and that was on the back of a good win at Warwick the time before that on kind of similar type of ground. I can, it's not surprising that she's favourite, but I think it's correct that she is at the top of the market.
Yeah, interesting. As you say, she's got the best form in the book. I was just slightly off put by the yard form. I thought A Path to Ronda, very fascinating for a yard who just continue to go great guns. Jamie Snowden's had a couple of winners in the last week. Gavin Sheehan's on board. This Daughter Getaway, he's had just the one run when winning Utoxeter at the back end of last year. I did it in pretty good style, power clear in the closing stages. And as you say, he's very closely related to that former high-class chaser Simon Sig. Of course, he was a Cheltenham Festival winner of yesteryear. I thought on pedigree, she looks a lovely type and can't do any more than win your debut. So I was tentatively A Path to Ronda in a race which Don is spot on, absent of any real deep information to be gleaned. Right, we'll switch over to Sunday's action now and concentrate on Naas. We're going to look at the 240. Obviously, at the time of recording, we do not have the decks in, but it is the Kingsfurze novice hurdle. There should be some nice sorts. Hopefully, win, lose, or draw kind of go into this. Fun won it 12 months ago, Don. I see Willie Mullins is well entered up here with the likes of You Ought to Know and Bellocchio, etc. in here. So it should be a pretty good race.
Yeah, no, it's normally an interesting race, Ed. Grade 3 race for horses, obviously, who aren't going to Cheltenham. Irish Point won this race a couple of years ago, and like he was obviously a classy horse for Gordon Elliott and Rob Corr, and then went on and won the Grade 1 novice hurdle at entry. Like obviously had this and went on to entry, skipped Cheltenham, but there, as you say, we don't have declarations yet. Gordon Elliott and Rob Cord, they're represented by relieved of duties. And I think he's an interesting horse. I thought he ran a really big race in the Moscow Flyer hurdle when he finished third behind Salvatore Mundi and Kellis Soar. That was a big run. He didn't back it up next time in the big handicap hurdle, in which Batman Girac fell at the final flight. The one that McLaury won at the Leopardstown Dublin Racing Festival. But he's a lightly raced horse, and I think there's more to come from him. I think there's more to come too from Shuffle the Deck, Ted Walsh's horse. He was good when he won his maiden hurdle at Naas back in December, just before Christmas. Now he was well beaten. He was pulled up actually in the Lawless of Naas hurdle the last day behind the yellow clay, but that was on very soft ground. And I suppose the fact that Ted Walsh thought enough of him to allow him to take his chance in a Grade 1 race, that to me was significant. And it obviously wasn't his running, but I think he can allow him that on really soft ground. The better ground should help him. When he won his maiden hurdle, it was good to yielding ground. So we don't know what the ground's going to be like, but I think it's drying all the time. It's definitely not going to be as soft as it was for the Lawless race in early January. So that should help him if he takes his chance. You've got Card Counter in here as well for Gordon Elliott. He's a really interesting horse. He was good the last day at Punchestown. He got the better of Dr. Eggman, who was a short enough price favourite. And the third horse that day, Champagne Kate of Pat Collins, came out and finished second behind Cocktail Divan there at Leopardstown on Monday. Now, he was well beaten by Cocktail Divan, but it was still a good run by Champagne Kate. And Card Counter, that was only his second run over hurdles. He fell in his first run over hurdles early on in the race. So for one so inexperienced to come out and put up a performance like that, that was really admirable, I thought. And he's a horse who can come forward from that. And the other one who is really interesting is Bellaccio for Willie Mullins. So, again, as you said, Ed, it depends how the Willie Mullins team shapes up for this, but he's a really interesting horse. Like he was a high-class horse off the flat. He was with David Menuzier. He won the Copper Horse Handicap at Royal Ascot for Willie off a mark of 100. He's rated 105 on the flat. He came out, he ran in the Royal Bond hurdle there the last day at the Hatton's Grace hurdle meeting at Ferryhouse, and he just didn't jump well. He was sent off as favourite, actually, but he just didn't jump well enough. He was well beaten in the end behind Tunsevator. But if he can just jump a bit better, he's obviously got that flat class. And if he can improve in his jumping, then he could be a seriously talented hurdler. So if he takes his chance, then I'd be interested in seeing how he goes.
Indeed. I mean, relatively calm waters, as you say, behind the likes of Romeo Coolio. I'd imagine Punchestown Festival will be on the target for him, wouldn't he, considering he actually bolted up there over hurdles previously. But yeah, we'll see who lines up, no doubt. Will be an informative contest in itself. And moving further forward, we'll move on now to the final race. We're going to, one of the final races we're going to cover for the afternoon. The 340 handicap hurdle again. Not a lot to go on at the moment, but is there anything in your notebook, Don?
Yeah, Duke of Lega is interesting. He's actually in the earlier race as well. He's in the 240, the 2 mile handicap hurdle. But he's just in such tremendous form. Like, remember, Duke of Lega finished second behind Paddington in the Madrid handicap. Michael Mavani was going there thinking he might have had a chance in that. Then he bumped into Paddington. Then he actually came out the following week, or maybe 2 weeks later, or 10 days later, and won a handicap at Naas, I think, off a mark in the 60s. But anyway, that's going back. He's 5 now. But just his last 2 runs have been so good, both at Naas. He won well off a mark of 105. On his penultimate run, he stayed on well, and then last time he was even better. He came right away from his rivals off a mark of 112. He's up to 122 now, so he's 10 pounds higher, and the ground would be a little bit of a concern. He probably does want really soft ground, so the drying ground won't be in his favour, but he soft ground or even good to soft or on that type of territory, that should see him run his race. He's in really good form. He loves Naas, and just depends which race he runs in. He does stay, but he's in the 2 mile and the 2.5 mile race as well. Heroes Rise is interesting as well, I think, for Gordon Elliott. And by contrast, he'll probably be suited if the ground does continue to dry. He was beaten at Ferryhouse last time on soft ground, but the time before that, he'd run really well at Thurles over nearly 3 miles to finish second behind Brave Fortune. The third horse that day, Millforce, came out and won at Thurles next time. Brave Fortune's a good horse of Pat Doyle's talented horse, and Heroes Rise gave him a bit of a race in the end. He won at Listowel over 2.5 miles on good ground during the summer last summer. So I think the dry, like he's only 5. He's a horse who could improve again. I think the drying ground is in his favour. And you have me in stitches. James Motherway's mare, she was good the last day at Limerick. She's only had 3 runs over hurdle. It was only her 3rd run. She only won by a length and a half in the end from Working on a Dream, but she probably idle. She wandered around a little bit on the run to the final flight. She probably had a fair bit more in hand than that. And coming on here, she stays 2.5 miles well. If she does take her chance, then she'd be on my radar as well for this.
Yeah, wonderful. And with the finale, we're going to concentrate on is the big one, I suppose, isn't it? The Leinster National listed handicap chase action here now. I mean, again, we don't know exactly who is lining up. I'd imagine last year's winner, Hot to Dark, will go again off a £9 higher mark. Is there one you've had in your notebooks for some time for this, Don?
Yeah, he'd be on my list for sure. Hart or Dark, he won the race last year for mark 128. He's £9 higher now than he was then. He had a good run over hurdles at Naas the last day. He was sent off his favourite. He finished 2nd behind Cave Court. He's got a hurdles mark 113, so he's just a better chaser than hurdler. That's just the way that said. It was one of those Albert Bartlett Triple Crown Series qualifiers the last day at Naas. So it may be that the final of that race is going to be on his radar. But in the meantime, I'm sure Gavin Cromwell will have him right and ready and in an attempt to win back-to-back renewals of the Leinster National. Fortune to Fortunat has coming on here. Like, he was a bit of a revelation last time in winning the Punchestown Grand National Trial. He's up £8 for that, but he's showed the last day that he can be as good over fences as over hurdles, and he saw that really well. So he is dropping down in trip, so maybe that's not in his favour, but it's still going to be a test of stamina. And the other horse who I think is really interesting is Affordale Fury. Like, he just hasn't had a good run at it in recent times. Like, he finished 2nd in the Albert Bartlett hurdle.
Yeah, remember it well.
Yeah, like, he was a massive price that day. And then he went to Galway for his beginner's chase, and he won a beginner's chase at Galway that's been won by some very, very good horses in the past. He beat Favre de Champdou that day, and it looked then like he was going to be one of the leading staying chasers of last season. Then he got beaten in the Florida Pearl Chase. It wasn't his running. He was off then until he came back there a few weeks ago, and he was running a big race. I think he probably would have won. Don't know if you saw that race, Ed. He made a really bad mistake at the final fence.
And handed it to Sam Majest.
He did. Like, I think he'd have beaten him. And that, even finishing a close second this time, I just say that was a really good run. Now, that's nearly 5 weeks ago. So hopefully, there's the bounce factor that you have to kind of consider. But if he does take his chance, hopefully that's enough time for him to get over his exertions on his first run back after a long break. Like, he's still only 7. He's only had 3 runs over fences. I think there's lots more to come from him, and he's a talented horse, and hopefully Noel Meade can get a run at it with him now, because I think he's definitely got the potential to be. I know he's got top weight, but he's got the potential to go higher than a mark of 147. That's his rating at the minute. So yeah, he'd be very high on my list if he runs here.
Indeed. I mean, definitely the class act, as you say. I don't think there's anything else in here that could notch up, if I'm mistaken, but be a back-to-back Grade 1 runner-up spots in novice hurdles at Cheltenham and Punchestown. He does bring a real class angle. Well, Bron ran a really good race once upon a time at Cheltenham Festival, didn't he? On the Real Whacker, if I'm not mistaken. He's a horse who's lost his way. But yeah, we shall see who does get declared for the Leinster National. But it should be a real bout of a contest on the eve of Cheltenham. I mentioned that word, Don. I said I'd save it to the end. Just very briefly, I know you'll be heading over soon to the Cotswolds there or thereabouts. The Lossy Mouth, the lack of news on Lossy Mouth's kind of filtering through, isn't it? That potentially, or at least if you look at the exchanges, she's probably going to be heading towards the Mayor's Hurdle now on the back of Rich Ritchie's comments on a preview night the other night for what they're worth. I mean, if she does go, it just feels a bit of a kind of a pop the balloon moment a little bit, doesn't it really, Don? I mean, to use Willie Mullin's quote of, this has been the plan for 2 years. It kind of, I know plans do change and horses do fall and everything, but to kind of rip it up and go for the Mayor's Hurdle again just feels a little bit of a cop-out in my view. But, I suppose I don't pay the trading fees. So.
Yeah, look, it would be a pity, Ed, definitely in my book, if she goes for the Mayor's Hurdle. Like, all the while we were hoping Brother Days Ahead would go for the Champion Hurdle to, make it that 4-pronged race. Yeah. And it was shaping up to be one of the most interesting Champion Hurdles in recent times, to see if Constitution Hill would be as good as he was. Brighter Days Ahead and Lossiemouth and Stateman against him. That was going to be a cracker. Yeah, look, if she goes for the Mayor's Hurdle, plus the Mayor's Hurdle with Brighter Days Ahead in the Champion Hurdle, for me the Mayor's Hurdle was a really competitive race then, and Joyous was supplemented, and that was going to be a really interesting race. But Lossiemouth in it would just, she'd be an odds-on shot, wouldn't she, to go and win it, and to take her away from the Champion Hurdle definitely remove some of the interest in the Champion Hurdle for sure. It makes it a less interesting race with her out of it than it would be with her in it. Look, owners and trainers, they make the decisions. We just have to be observers and hope that she does go and make up the big four in the Champion Hurdle.
Indeed, we await official news. I suppose we could have a nice a Formscan discussion on itself about the Cheltenham Festival programme and look, whether the Mayor's Hurdle should continue, or at least if it does continue, perhaps with a ratings cap or something, because as you say, you want to see the top individuals clashing. That's what the Cheltenham Festival is all about. But we shall wait and see. I'm sure there's going to be more twists and turns in the anti-post nonsense between now and the next 3 or 4 days or so, whatever. Anyway, Don, many thanks for your input once again for all the weekend's action, and I'll be seeing you in the Cotswolds.
Yeah, please God, I'll go well.
Brilliant stuff. Our thanks to sponsors Midnite Bet. Thank you for watching at home. And of course, don't forget to follow irishracing.com for all the latest news, views, and features for everything to do with the Leinster National, the Imperial Cup, or the Cheltenham Festival. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again soon.